All right. Welcome to NerdLanta's second mini-sode. It's just like a little NerdLanta quickie. Just get a little taste of us. You don't have to commit to a full hour.
That sounds dirty. A quickie.
Yep, that's the point, Chris. You've
Get
caught
your
on.
quickie. That's what we should call this. We should call it the NerdLanta Quickie.
We should call it the NerdLanta Quickie. Everybody wants a quickie with us. So we're excited to be here. This is our mini-sode where we kind of do a little bit more of a deep dive into pop culture topics, and sometimes we may have a guest, or sometimes we may do trivia. Tonight we're going to talk about Bill and Ted, one of my favorite movies from my childhood. What about you, Chris? Were you a fan of that movie?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So when this came out, I believe it was in 1988 or 89. So I was very young. I was 8 or 9 years old at the time, but perfect age, I think, to watch the first Bill and Ted movie. And then, of course, Bogus Journey, which was actually my more favorite of the two, that came out in, I believe, 1991.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so much fun, too. Yeah, the trilogy is great. And it took so well because it spawned a cartoon series, not extremely popular, but there was a cartoon series, an animated series, and also there was a, I don't know if you remember that it once had a TV show as well.
I remember the animated series. I don't remember the TV show.
It was canceled pretty quickly. It was not very good.
Was anybody famous in it, or?
No, it was just these two guys that, sort of looked like Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter, but not entirely. The acting wasn't all that great, and you can tell they tried. I really don't recall watching it. I may have seen like one or two episodes. It was not something to be remembered, and It wasn't on for very long.
It looks like it came out in 1992, and it had like 7 episodes, and that was probably 7 too many.
Yeah,
I feel like
so that was
so many people do that with like so many shows do that. I read recently there was a fun article of like shows like your favorite movies and like how they made sitcoms and shows out of them and how they like totally failed. I mean, like Clueless had a TV show for a while. I mean, there's tons of Dirty Dancing, and they tried doing a Dirty Dancing series, and they always fail because you cannot have like they did a Ferris Bueller one. I mean, you cannot not have those like original folks in the series. It just doesn't. It never works.
It's very tough. Any attempt that I've seen where they would take a major motion picture that was very popular and they try to turn it into a TV show, I can't think of anything really that has held up except for Fargo. I believe that did pretty well, first being a movie and then turning into a TV show. Watchmen, which is based on a comic book, but it became a movie and then turned into a TV show. So certain things it tends to work out. But yeah, in most cases, especially something about the late 80s and early 90s, they tried so hard to turn these movies into TV shows, and it didn't work out very well. You mentioned Ferris Bueller, which I didn't watch that TV show, but I know that I think Jennifer Aniston, she got her start in that.
She totally got her start in that. She played the sister. So she was Jennifer Grey's character in the TV show, and that's how she kind of got her start. There's a couple old TV shows that were from movies that actors kind of got their start. This isn't a TV show, but Brittany and I went to the Plaza Drive-In last weekend and saw Nightmare on Elm Street, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I love that it's like Johnny Depp's first movie. Like it literally says in the credits, like introducing Johnny Depp. And it's so wild that like out of all the characters, like in the movie, he's the one that now is like the most famous.
Yeah. I love that movie too. Definitely another great 80s film. We'll have to talk about that later on for maybe our next Real Recall segment.
Mm-hmm.
But, speaking of Nightmare on Elm Street, also, we're talking about, movies that turn into TV shows that actually had its own TV series called, I think it was Freddy's Nightmares. Did you remember seeing that?
I remember that. I totally forgot about that. That'd be a fun rewatch.
These are so many shows that were forgotten about because they really didn't last very long. But I thought it was kind of a cool concept, but just not done very well. But it's entertaining if you or the listeners, if you get a chance to go on YouTube and just type in Freddy's Nightmares and check out a few of the episodes. They didn't age very well, but what did age pretty good is Bill and Ted, because they now have the new movie Bill and Ted Face the Music, which was just released, and it's available. You can watch it on video on demand. I believe I use a service called Vudu, if I'm not mistaken. So I just watched that, and I thought it was pretty terrific. I mean, if you're a fan of Bill and Ted, you're going to enjoy this. It is interesting that, this is 30 years later, I believe, 25 years later, and they came out and did this movie, and it was I was very surprised to hear the announcement that they were going to make a third Bill and Ted movie. When you heard about that, what did you think?
I was so excited. Like I said, I was a huge Bill and Ted fan. I was actually in, what city was I in recently? I mean, I'm such a nerd. Like I think it was Chattanooga or Savannah or something. And there was this like store there with a bunch of retro toys and comics. And they actually had the Bill and Ted action figures from the cartoon. And I totally bought them. And they're on my bookshelf. But
Nice.
yeah, so like I totally was excited. I feel like part of it is that, the story was so fun, but also just the nostalgia, right? I mean, I think anything right now that is hearkening us back to our childhood days of like the 80s and 90s just hit some kind of sweet spot for us. And, as everything in pop culture right now seems to be kind of going back to these reboots and these re-releases, and it's just kind of interesting. And I was really excited. So I have not seen the movie yet, but I'm super excited to see it. So I think, we'll talk about it from the perspective of somebody who has seen the movie versus somebody who has not seen the new movie.
Yeah, it's very enjoyable. And for any listeners that maybe aren't familiar with Bill and Ted, because I do sometimes forget how old I am. So I forget that maybe people don't know who Bill and Ted is. It's kind of a family-friendly film for the most part. But yeah, so there's these two guys. They're in high school. They're kind of idiots. They play, they love rock music, and they have a band called the Wild Stallions. And essentially, they go back in time. They have a history report that's due for school, and they find a way to go back in time through a time traveling device, which is a telephone booth. George Carlin is in it, and he's like their guide.
Mm-hmm.
And he brings them through history, medieval times, and they meet all these famous historical figures. And you really just have to watch the movie, but it's just very funny how they interact with these characters from a different time period, and them being these, at the time, these 80s kind of stoner kids talking to these different people. It's very funny. And then, of course, the sequel came out where they go to hell. That was a different turn that I wasn't expecting. I'm glad they did that. They wanted to do something that was different, so they go to hell in the next one. And of course, we have Face the Music, and that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit today. So like I said, about 25 years later, they come out with Face the Music. And wasn't there like a theme where they had to write a song? It had to be like the perfect song to reunite the world or to prevent the world from ending. Do you know the story behind that?
For the new film or the second one?
I think just the original or the second one. I think the whole thing was, the idea was that they had to write this perfect song, and if that was not written, then I guess the world was something is going to happen, something very bad. I don't know. I forget the full details. I wanted to watch the last couple of movies before this review, and then it just didn't happen. So I'm only going based off of the latest one. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the second one is like definitely, it's the first one's so not unforgettable. And the second one's, I feel like it's still a classic, but it's a little bit more forgettable. I just remember I haven't rewatched it yet, but I remember that there were like robot duplicates of Bill and Ted, and they have like these doubles. So yeah. I remember they're trying to like escape the afterlife. Then you have the Grim Reaper. And then I think at the very end of the movie, it says something like Bill and Ted wrote a song that like saved the world, or so. It was sort of like a wrap up. And then I feel like they kind of use that as the premise for this third movie 30 years later.
Exactly. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, that was. I enjoyed the second one. I enjoyed them both, but one of my favorite characters in the second one, Bogus Journey, was Grim Reaper, played by William Sadler, who actually makes a return in Face the Music, and I think that was just such a brilliant role, funny concept. They take this character, the Grim Reaper, obviously not somebody you want to meet, at all. but they turned this character that you would think would be very scary, and he actually turned out to be very funny, and he's kind of an idiot and a lot of personality behind him. And I thought William Sadler did a great job in that role. And of course, Keanu Reeves as Ted and Alex Winter as Bill. They were perfect, and George Carlin was amazing with his role as.
Rest in peace, George Carlin.
Yeah, he was very good, and they actually do pay tribute to him in the new movie as well.
Oh, that's good.
Now, before we get into talking about the new movie, there's a lot of other characters, fictional characters that became popular, I believe, in the 90s that I think were loosely based off of Bill and Ted. For example, Beavis and Butthead, I think I think there's some similarities there. And then I think about also Wayne's World.
Wayne's World, I was literally about to say that. I was like, yeah, as you were talking, that definitely popped in my head. And I was like, I wonder if the Wayne's World characters were loosely based on Bill and Ted.
But Bill and Ted are the originals from what I understand.
The OG Stoneheads.
They're the OG.
The OG Stoneheads.
Check out what's been going on with the Pop Culture Cosmos Show and the PCC Multiverse.
The better that these Marvel films do, the higher the standards are going to be for not just other films in general, but other Marvel films also.
I think it's really hard to end a show with this many fans in a satisfying way.
That's the Pop Culture Cosmos Show.
And the PCC Multiverse.
Playing worldwide on radio 7 days a week and right here on the ESO Network.
All right, welcome back to the NerdLanta mini-sode, or I prefer, you called it a Quickie. I think we're just going to call it a Quickie now.
Yeah, everyone calls them mini-sodes. We're calling them NerdLanta Quickies. I'm going to be 40 next year, and it's weird because I'm starting to see all these characters that I was like the same age or kids with that are like now parents in movies, like Alicia Silverstone is a parent in a show. Demi Moore is a parent. Bill and Ted are parents. And that's like really weird to like see your childhood stars. I mean, Luke Perry, R.I.P. Luke Perry, but he was a dad. It's just, it's so weird to see your favorite celebrities from when you were a kid that are now being cast as parents. You're like, this is really weird. But I imagine it's even weirder when they're grandparents. That will freak me out.
I still think it's weird that people have kids. Like you're saying, no, yeah, it is kind of weird, growing up, in the 80s and being a fan of all these different movies and TV shows and characters and Bill and Ted. But they did it right with this movie. So they have two daughters that are kind of like miniature versions of Bill and Ted, and they're played by Samara Weaving, and then she does a great job. She is the daughter of Bill, and then we have
sister in Atypical, isn't she?
I believe so. Yeah, she's I believe she's Australian, and then we also have Bridget Lundy Payne, who plays the daughter of Ted. They did a great job. The daughter of Ted, she acts like him pretty well. Like it's pretty much on point. It's actually quite hilarious just to the mannerisms and facial expressions and the way she talks. It's pretty much a dead-on early Keanu Reeves impression. She knocked it out of the ballpark.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see it. And yeah, I think if I'm correct, she's the sister in Atypical, and she's a great actress. She plays the lead sister, and I'm excited to see her like in a new role. I think that is super fun. And then the other actress, I know I've seen her in something. What was her name again?
Bridget Lundy Payne. I'm not sure where I've seen her before. I think this might have been the first time I saw her. But yeah, she's been in some stuff, and Kid Cudi is in this movie. He has a cameo appearance, which I thought was really neat.
Okay, so Bridget Lundy Payne is the one that's the sister in Atypical.
Oh, okay.
She's the sister. And then what's the other daughter's name?
She was in a movie, I think it came out a couple years ago. I forget the name of it. I think it was Ready or Not.
Oh no, she was in Hollywood, that Netflix show by Ryan Murphy about Hollywood in the golden era. And she was awesome. She's beautiful, and she plays this great character who is trying to like make it in Hollywood, but she's like the daughter of some of the execs. And
I got to check that one out. But yeah, I had a great cast. So obviously, Keanu Reeves, Alex Winter. We have Christian Shale, who plays Kelly, the daughter of Rufus. She did a great job, and Kid Cudi, I thought he had a pretty great appearance in that movie as well. And it was a good. This is the movie I think we all needed with the way things are in the world and how things are just so crazy. This was a feel good, lighthearted movie that is very family friendly, and everybody can enjoy it. It's definitely something that we needed. I think you're going to look forward to watching it. It was the humor is still there, and it is for the first 3 minutes it was a little weird, I guess, to see. And I hate to say that because people age. We all look older. It is what it is. It's not a big deal, but it just took some adjustment, I suppose, to see Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves in these roles. These characters are, the last time they did this was 25, 30 years ago. So I guess that took some adjustment. But once you get past that, they pick it up so well. It's almost like the last movie came out just a year ago, and this is the next one after that. So I thought that they did it pretty well. It was amazing to see them easily go back into these characters from their youth.
I was going to say, I think, how far we've come with, let's say, Keanu Reeves. Alex Winter isn't quite as well known, but Keanu Reeves, sort of the same as I was talking about with Nightmare on Elm Street and introducing Johnny Depp. It's like sort of introducing Keanu Reeves as one of his earlier films, and now we're 30 years down the road with Keanu. Point Break, The Matrix, obviously, and even kind of the persona he's built around himself now was being sort of like this intellectual actor. He very respectful of women, kind of just seeing the journey of Keanu, which I think that should be a book. I'm going to trademark that, The Journey of Keanu. It's kind of weird, I feel like in the preview to see him revert back to that kind of stoner character. I wonder what that was like for him to kind of be I wonder if it was fun for him to kind of go back to that character, after how far he's come.
Yeah, they had the idea to do this movie about 10 years ago, so it was planned for quite some time, and they were just very meticulous with the script writing. The producers and the script writers, they took their time with this. They definitely wanted to make sure that it wasn't rushed, and they wanted to let everyone know that this is certainly not, they didn't do this because everyone's all into nostalgic movies now. There's a lot of reboots that are coming out that are based off of 80s movies, and they're like, no, this is not the case. And, they're not looking to make money off of this either, really. They just want to do something fun. And they did it. And, it's pretty interesting the way this whole thing started with, Bill and Ted. It actually started inside of an improv class in 1983. The writers and producers of this, Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson, they had a improv class in 1983. They were UCLA classmates, and they developed the characters of Bill and Ted. So it's kind of crazy how this thing goes all the way back to early 80s.
I love that. I love that it started off as just sort of improv character, just a random improv characters that evolved into something that, sort of a cultural phenomenon of a movie. And just, these characters have lasted for so long. My nephews, I have nephews who are 7 and 11 who watched Bill and Ted recently. So it's it spans generations. And who would have
what
thought
do they
that?
think?
They loved it. They thought it was really funny. And, my older nephew Gabriel he'd be great for NerdLanta. He's really nerdy and he's into gaming and things like that. So he loved the history aspect of it, how they got to go back in time and meet all these historical figures. And then Charlie, my 7-year-old nephew, he just thought it was obviously just super silly and super funny.
But yeah, so, this was an interesting fact. Originally, it was going to be Bill, Ted, and Bob.
That does not sound like it has the same ring to it. It sounds like 3 men I went on a date with in my early 20s and then decided I was gay.
Yeah, Bill, Ted, and Bob. They sound like they're going to knock on your door and try to sell you a phone book or something. I don't know. But so the roles were reversed originally. Each actor actually auditioned for the opposite role. But when the writers and producers saw their audition tapes, they thought the opposite would work better. In an online chat with MoviePhone, Reeves claimed that he didn't even know their roles had been switched until after they had been casted. So
that's so funny. It sounds just as disorganized as you would think. the movie would be, right? Like, it's probably created. There were probably a bunch of stoners when they made the movie, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we totally got it mixed up with who was playing who."
It sounds like it sounds like they did make a mistake there and try to make it into a fun story. But we all know what happened. They probably smoked way too much weed and were like, "Oh wait, which one's Bill? Oh wait, which one's Ted?
Yeah, which one's Bill Preston?"
So this is funny. Pauly Shore was among the hundreds of actors who auditioned for the role of Ted, and in 1991, Shore hosted an MTV special called "Bill and Ted's Bogus Premiere Party," in which Shore talks to Reeves about his failed audition. So I can't imagine that. I'd love to see that conversation take place on the set of this MTV show, where Pauly Shore's like, "Yeah, I can't do an impression of him. I'm not going to." But the Weasel, listening to the Weasel explain to Keanu Reeves that he didn't get the role in Bill and Ted must have been a hilarious thing to watch. And, speaking of Pauly Shore, for years, rumors circulated that the script for 1996's Biodome, starring Pauly Shore and Stephen Baldwin, was actually written as the third film in the Bill and Ted franchise. And in 2011, Alex Winter laid this rumor to rest when he said the story is a total urban legend.
That's so funny. Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Pauly Shore. I mean, it's usually when you hear about people who audition for roles, you're like, I could never see that person in that role. I will admit, I could see Pauly Shore in that role, but I still think they definitely made the better decision by casting Keanu Reeves, especially because Pauly Shore, I mean, he only has one type of character. You know what I mean? Like, that's just kind of himself. Like, he just is cast as himself. But I think that, what made Bill and Ted so fun was that they had, they're viable actors, and you may not have known that at the time, but looking back, you're like, they definitely made, I think, the right decision. And to me, I mean, love Pauly Shore, but he would get annoying after a while.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened with his career too. And he was funny for the first couple of films, but I could see him in that role. But I'm much happier that Keanu Reeves took over on that. We are running out of time here. This went by way quicker than I thought it was going to, but it was fun. And so I guess I want to leave off on, I know you haven't seen Bill and Ted Face the Music yet, but you're definitely going to enjoy it. So, and if for anyone else that hasn't seen it yet, do so. I think it's pretty cheap or reasonable, I should say. I think you could rent it for like $13, or you could probably see it online for free. But I'd suggest just giving them some money, because they can't. I think it's in theaters, but it's not. Obviously with the way theaters are right now, they can't open up in all theaters. So they're making most of their money off of this, I'd imagine, through the video rentals, online, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that the Atlanta in the Starlight Drive-In is doing a double feature with Bill and Ted and Spider-Man: Homecoming. So
nice.
I love drive-in theaters. So if you want to break and want to get out there and see it on the big screen in a safe environment, then seeing it at a drive-in could be fun. So I think I'm going to try to do that. This was super fun, dude. I hope everybody out there stays excellent. And I look forward to our next NerdLanta podcast.
Party on.
Party on, dude.